Okay, somebody around. Oh,
I just want to see what his issue was.
The Zoom is ready to go. If you just,
Just hit
let
launch
me,
meeting, right?
no, you don't even have to do that. It's actually,
I think Carla knows how to do it.
yeah. It's right there.
It's you just
So
open
you just open it, yeah. So let me see. This one is. Okay, it's already covered, so it should let you share the screen.
I just want to see what's up with his.
It's ready to go.
I know what happened.
You can share the
I know what
screen,
happened.
the Zoom's already up.
Well, you didn't save it as the right thing. Well, where's his laptop?
Well, and then you're welcome to just start yours, and I can support Paul if she needs to get Jon ready.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'm gonna do, how do I get to the drive from here? Okay, so you're just gonna. You're gonna go to files, right? And then at the bottom, this is the USB. But we don't, so it's gonna be in here.
You're gonna have to ask Terry on how to get to the drive.
So he had OneDrive.
No,
We use his computer and then we get to put that. I'm just gonna put it back on. Yeah, put it back on. And then I'll scan it to you.
So we're gonna have.
It was on the drive. Yes.
This is the. I don't think.
Okay, what's he gonna plug this into? You can plug it into that computer. Actually, I know how to do it. I know how to do it. Okay, his presentation on his computer. First, that.
But I don't know. I'm saying there's.
Very well.
You know, that's what.
It takes you about a day to scan.
Okay.
Hey, Dad.
Oh, what's the easy or somebody?
Yeah.
So 3/4.
How do you turn that on?
Just turn it off, turn it back on.
Yeah, but it's, you know. Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty. Actually, I was shaved out. So they were smelling.
My presentation is on the drive, and they're getting his presentation read down. And it is under agendas. It's under agendas. I think it's the 2020. Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay,
And you're getting his readout.
so when you get ready to go, if you just share the screen,
And then she has his on that one.
you have it on there? Okay.
Just make sure it works.
I see.
Continue, just continue. I think it's just his. It's in these. Top, there we go. It's a sandwich.
So when you click it over?
I couldn't. It did that and it wouldn't let me.
Yeah. They eject it. Let's try it again.
Hey, Ben, send it in an email. Here, can you, let's email it to this.
It is. You can send it to my email. It's wtkelly@ncsu.edu.
Now, one have lost.
Bottom line.
Yeah. Most of my.
Got this shop.
No, they're on home. And at least not foundation.
Yeah, we got a nice. And
Hey, Dr. Kelly, it's WTS.
WT Kelly, WTKELLEY at ncsu.edu. I've got hers.
you got hers? Okay.
Okay.
He's got yours. You
Yeah.
can start.
Okay, let's just make sure we can get it first. Then it's not like.
Okay.
And if your mom's asking people to sign up, we have stuff to give away anyway.
Okay, great.
I put a note on the Zoom that was start showing.
Okay, thank you. I'm just gonna make a couple announcements at 7. Everybody. We're gonna get started in just a few minutes. I want to welcome you. We got some brand new people here. We got a couple in Florida. We've got some brand new, never been here before, so welcome, welcome, welcome. Is there anybody that's new that I haven't personally greeted yet? Well, I know that you're welcome back. So come on in. If you didn't know, before the meeting, we have a potluck out in the shelter. And we decided to come in tonight though, because it's hot. I'm just gonna point out some of our board directors. This is Eric. If you wanted to give our club money for any reason, this is the person to give the money to. Membership, we got those signs, it's part of the week, we're feeding the week, we got the membership.
Okay.
And we're also gonna be doing a new raffle today. Where's Antoine? Antoine, you wanna come up while we're getting the technology set up? We wanna talk about the apiary and the new raffle.
Yes. All right. So,
Zoom people here.
I don't know if they can or not.
okay. All right, let's go proceed.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Mike Management. I'm one of our team.
Yes, sir, Eric.
Yeah, here,
I'll need some of the background noise.
Antoine, why don't you stand right next to the owl to make sure that our people can hear?
Hello, everyone.
We've got the meeting starting here. If y'all wanna listen up.
All right, thanks, Terry. Let's give a round of applause for Dr. Kelly, Terry Kelly, who stays late. After a busy day at the office, he stays here at the extension office and helps us out so that we can have a place to meet. Okay, and Antoine, you're gonna be talking about the nuke.
Okay, so at the apiary Johnson Farm, we are very blessed to have 10 healthy, strong colonies producing honey right now. The first batch of honey got extracted and donated. Jim, has that been bottled? Not yet?
No.
Okay,
As needed.
as needed. Okay, what do we have, 10, 12 gallons-ish? Somewhere in there?
No, like 8.
8, okay, so we have 8 gallons that will be donated to local charities and food banks, and that depending on the discretion of our workers out there who are doing it. Okay, so at the apiary, we also have, we usually every year at the picnic, which we couldn't do because of our scheduling and timing, we give away, we have a lottery for a 5-frame nuke, which is 5 frames of brood and a laying queen. That you can win for 100. Did you say, is it $100?
You're the king of the apiary, you tell us.
I'm a sir. No kings. Christine, it's $100. You put your name in the hat and you get a nuke that's probably worth $150 or $250 for 250. Who said 250? $300. 5 frames of brood, laying queen. You get the best of the best, and if it doesn't.
So it's $100.
$100 is the ticket price.
That's what we did last year.
Yeah, you put your name in the hat and you get yourself a fabulous nuke. And everyone who's gotten something from the apiary has always sung its praises and are enjoying the reaps of its harvest year after year after year. So.
So if we're interested, I'll pass around pieces of paper. So we put our name in the hat for the nuke. It
Exactly.
doesn't cost anything unless you win.
Correct.
And then if you win, then you can pay $100 for it.
Excellent.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
Right?
That's a better deal.
Yeah, it's free for everybody to enter, but
Yeah.
if you win, then you've committed $100.
Yeah, so, and that will benefit the club, and it gets right back to our membership is what it does. So it helps us with stress on the apiary. As far as the apiary is concerned, everything is healthy and going just well. We are going to have a summer session, final session this coming Sunday afternoon from 1 to 3. And we will, I'm kidding. So we will go ahead from 1 to 3.
It's a ratty group. We're all.
It's all good. It's all good. Everyone's got something going on. That's all right. 1 to 3 for our people at home, for the thymol treatments, which are regimen. I posted on Facebook this afternoon. It's our regimen at the apiary. And usually it's a month-long thing, but we give it about a 6-week time frame because we go back and do mite checks, and we'll do that with our group as well. And we get a respite for 6 weeks.
Let me ask you this, because we do have people in from out of town that are visiting. Can they just come to the
Everyone is
apiary?
Everyone is free and welcome to come
So-
to the apiary session.
So tonight, we're gonna be talking about mites. And then if you wanna actually get hands-on practical experience, then at Historic Johnson Farm this Sunday in the afternoon, and Antoine would be the person to get with about participating. And now we're gonna pass the baton over to Carla,
Okay,
our
thank you.
vice president. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Sorry, we kind of had some technical issues.
Excuse me, Michelle, it's really, really difficult to hear. You call the side part, say.
We had a request to settle down, so settle down.
All right, thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Sorry for the later start. It's kind of crazy that we're already halfway through the year. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. I wanted to start by saying we went to the North Carolina State Beekeeping Conference, and it was in Pinehurst. It was about 3.5 hours away. And it was me, Miss Michelle, Eric, my family was there, and we had a wonderful time. So I don't know if any of you guys went to the conference last summer, but it was actually over here in Blue Ridge. So it was super convenient. It was really close. We had a lot of volunteers from the club that came to help, and that was just awesome. But they had a honey tasting thing. We had a lot of speakers. They had a live apiary. I don't know, y'all can't see by the size, but that NC State thing was actually all made out of wood, and it was about 6 feet long. It was huge, and someone entered it as a craft. So it was just pretty cool, and there's a lot of neat things that we're actually just really happy to see. And then next summer, it will be back at Blue Ridge. So we'll have a lot more announcements of that, and the club will be able to go, and we have a lot of volunteering opportunities, and then also like booth opportunities probably, and things like that as well. So our speakers list. So in August, we actually have Lewis Cobble, who's our NC State our regional bee inspector. So he actually talked a lot at the state conference on Saturday. and Friday about different things, and he's really excited to see you guys. He hasn't been down this way since last August. This week, we have Jon Robertson, he's my dad. He's also the owner of Hooper's Creek Bee Company. And then, I don't know if you guys saw it on Facebook, and it also went out in an email, 2025 speakers. So I did our speaker list for this year. We have a few more really good speakers coming in. Everyone knows Scott Davis, he's our regional director. Rick Stutton is coming from Kentucky. And then we're not gonna have a speaker for November. We were not supposed to have a speaker, we were supposed to have a holiday party. We are actually November 9th, and I did not put it on here, and I apologize. We are gonna be joining Buncombe County, Haywood County, and McDowell County, and we're actually gonna help host Corey Stevens. So Corey Stevens and then 2 more guest speakers are going to be coming at Warren Wilson Community College. And we're gonna have them for a whole day, and Corey's gonna give 2 classes, and then we're gonna have 2 different speakers giving classes as well. So that's November 9th, and that, I believe, went out on an email to all the members, and I'll make sure to post it on the Facebook group as well.
Could you repeat which counties are cooperating, collaborating?
So it'll be Henderson County, Haywood County, McDowell, and Buncombe. So talking about our 2025 speakers, if there's any subjects you guys want to hear, or any speakers that you want to come back from this year, or anything like that, if you guys could please let me know. You guys can email me, or I think it was on Facebook as well, or just let me know tonight, just so we can start getting that ready. Just so some of the bigger speakers, if we chose to bring any of those, we would be able to get them now, as they're booked out. So another big thing that's coming up is, so August, you know, a lot of our directors have talked about this for a while, and we're actually excited. One of the main things that I think I learned at the state conference, and Miss Michelle as well, we went to a lot of these president meetings. And they actually talked a lot about the certified beekeepers and certified honey producers as well as classes and actually certifying these people. And so there was a big award that we were entered in, and it was a GAP award, and it was that big folder that we all came and compiled with, and we didn't get it. And a lot of that, one of the reasons we didn't make the cut to win that award was because we had a low level of certified honey producers and a low level of the certified beekeepers. And so we're actually gonna have a class, and we're not exactly sure about prices and things like that. Obviously, we're gonna open it up for other counties, but it'll also be a lot cheaper for our club members. And we're thinking about Saturday the 17th. That's not set in stone yet, but we're gonna go through all the prep courses for that. We're going to take the test at the end of that day, and then the following Saturday, Mr. Duncan, I saw him sneak in. He's actually gonna let us borrow his hives and his farm, and we're gonna be giving people practicals. So that's gonna be able to get you your certified beekeeper in North Carolina. And then also at that August 17th meeting, we're gonna be able to get our, if you guys would like to register to be certified honey producers, we can go through that as well. And that basically gets you the ability to be on the North Carolina State honey list. And also you get a sticker, I guess they're stickers, and there's square ones, a bunch of different ones you can pick to go on your bottle to say, I am a certified honey producer, and it has your number on it as well. So now, Mr. Antoine, do you have an apiary update for us?
I thought I gave it earlier.
Yeah, you already get that. I don't know what I was thinking. All right, so that's all I have, and now Jon Robertson is gonna come give us a talk about mites and some other things. Oh yeah, sorry. Is there any other directors that have any new? I think I had asked.
I just wanted to bring something up. There was an email that went out that, Michelle, you were thinking about just extending your president term by a year, and I don't think you can do that. I think I instructions for the election, which needs to take place in November. So that was just my thoughts on that.
Don't leave.
Oh, yeah,
Are these the same policies and procedures that have not been updated since 2013?
no, the policies and procedures, I believe, were updated in 2018. And Mark Habel, Susan Habel, and myself are working on a further update that we hope to present to the club in September
Right, well, if you don't write,
for the following year.
you don't like the rules, you can change them.
Well, you can, but we're really not going to be able to change those rules prior to the November election just because of timing constraints.
Yeah, so what a great problem to have that we've got a full board. We've got so many people willing to serve. I just want to just reflect the difference from, here we are in July 2024 and how different it was when poor Pat was trying to go to surgery and nobody would step up
Oh,
for months at a time, right?
Yeah.
In 2020.
2022.
Oh, there, Pat remembers. Yeah, so we have look, we've got people showing up at every club meeting. Every time I check the website, we've got new people signing up. We're growing. We're really doing well. We were acknowledged at the state conference. So I think what Christy is asking for are people to be on a nominating committee so that we can put forth what needs to happen for November. Wouldn't it be great to have an election? I think it'd be great. A nice one, not like
with choices.
a fun one that's like gonna take attention away from our presidential race, which is like a downer for everybody, right? And
Yes,
violence
we're all
is never
trying
the
to-
answer, by the way, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, violence is never an answer. So,
And I have to say that kudos to you, because I think a lot of your ideas and your energy contributed to motivating the club.
thank you. I got Carly here and Christy, my girls. It's nice to see some girls in front of the room, right, Jim, right, Pat? Well, you guys are, we always had a lot of men leading the club, and I like to see the infusion of women. So how shall we move forward, Miss Secretary?
I think that we should get a board meeting and
Okay.
determine who to appoint. I think a committee of 3 is probably as many as you need for your nominating committee.
Okay,
Because their job is just to collect names of people who either put their own name forward or are nominated by someone else, and they have to reach out to everybody that's suggested.
great.
Then we'll put the slate together to present to the club.
In November at our honey tasting.
Well, we present the slate, I think we should present the slate in September, so everybody can mull over who's on the
I love it.
slate,
Yeah,
and then cast our votes in November.
perfect. So then I actually could step down next year. Wouldn't that be amazing? So I'm saying that I'm willing to serve. I'm not saying that it's
And I'm saying you
necessary.
gotta sign up for 2 years.
I just got like so excited at conference. I was like, oh, sure. I'll volunteer another year.
Are there
Okay,
any
perfect.
Questions, otherwise I will get out of the way and let
Okay.
you talk.
Okay, great. And then that was also, she's the person who's also in charge of bylaws. So if there's something that's really frustrating you, to Gary's point,
Contact me.
that is happening. That's one of the things that we wanted to make sure that our bylaws reflect who the club is today. Eric, did you want to give us an accounting of like what's in our bank?
Okay.
I'm gonna run away.
Are you going to?
Yeah.
So, bank balance as of today is $4,807.05.
Any questions for our treasurer? I know a lot of you are here brand new, maybe wanna, there's questions about becoming a member. It's $15 a year for the whole family, those kinds of things. This is the person to ask.
Wow.
All right, just making sure that our Zoom people, looks like they, some of them lost audio. If you need Wi-Fi, here's the code to be using today. And let's give a round of applause for Jon Robertson as he's talking. All right. It should be just, try one of these front and back and just see the arrow key. Yeah, there you go. If for some reason that it doesn't, you just kind of press on the picture and then it'll activate again.
Okay.
And there's two microphones, one here and one there.
All right, well, good evening, everybody. I am Jon Robertson. I'm glad to have this opportunity.
Can't hear you.
I'm also soft-spoken, so thank you, Carla. Can everybody hear okay? I tend to get nervous and get quieter and quieter and faster. So if I get too quiet, please call me out on it. So for those who don't know who I am, my family and I live in Hoopers Creek, North Carolina. And we run a small operation called Hoopers Creek Bee Company, and it's located in Arden, North Carolina. And this evening, we're talking about mites. So in my mind, our season starts when the end of sourwood finishes. So often as beekeepers, we're tired, right? July is hot, August is hot, and we're thinking about being done. In reality, maybe we should be thinking about getting started. I say getting started because what we do in July and August is going to reflect heavily on what we have in March. Does that make sense? There's this little thing called winter in between. And winter tends to expose how well we've been doing. It exposes me. Warren Buffett says that when the tide goes out, those who have been skinny dipping are exposed. And when it comes to skinny dipping and beekeeping, a lot of that has to do with mites. So we'll be talking about mites. Not my favorite subject, but a very important subject. And anyway, let's get started. I chose this picture. Carla took this picture the other day, and it's just beautiful. So I wanted to show you guys. This is in Transylvania County. It's a beautiful spot. This is actually we have a construction company, so this is one of our construction clients. He's a contractor, and he's allowed us to put bees on his property. He has a beautiful spot here, so we're thankful for him and his wife allowing us to do that. So I wanted to share that with you guys. For those who are not from our area, you'll notice that we have a bear fence around this. That's necessary in our area. Lots of bears, and so most places require a bear fence, and which is what you see there. All right, so know your numbers. Successful beekeepers are often those beekeepers that know their numbers. My family can attest that when I don't know my mite numbers, I usually get in trouble. Or when I get overconfident with my mite numbers. So what you see there, for those who don't know, there on the right-hand side is a mite wash kit. There's a number of these. We use this one. We found that this one works well for us. There's others that work just as well. Other systems, but this one does the job for us. And if I remember correctly, this isn't this year's. I don't think it was last year's. I think it was the years before. And I think there's 41, either 39 or 41 mites in the bottom of that alcohol wash. That can get you in trouble. Not what you want to see as a beekeeper. But unless you do some sort of a wash, you don't know what those numbers are. Often I'll ask new beekeepers in the it'll be September, October. I'll see them and I'll say, how are your bees doing? Oh, the bees are doing great. I'll ask them, how are your mites doing? Mites are doing great as well. I haven't seen any. So knowing our numbers is important. So I've listed a few reasons here why knowing your numbers is important. Obviously, the biggest one I think we would all agree with, and I'm just going to give us the first one, and I like your guys' opinion. Health of the hive. So this is a dead out. Right here, no bees in this hive. So mites tend to limit the health of your hive. What might be some other reasons we would want to know our mite numbers? And there are more reasons, so,
Just to determine whether you need to treat.
okay. So the better information you have, the better decision you can make, right? Yes, ma'am.
See if you're developing resistance to treatments.
Everybody hear that?
To see if you're developing resistance to treatments.
So often I hear, well, I'm gonna treat anyways, I'm just gonna treat, right? No need to check.
Whether or not your mite, treatment was effective,
Mhm.
according to Louis Cobble, president, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
Yeah, very simple, right? My treatment works like it's supposed to 30% of the time. It works somewhat 30% of the time, and it doesn't work at all 30% of the time. How do we know? Know your mite numbers, right? Not fun, but neither is going into winter like this and wondering in January where you're gonna be at in March. So what other reasons might there be for knowing your numbers? I've got a couple more, but I'm sure you guys have some as well.
Maybe keeping mites from spreading. See if you do have a hive that's infested or somebody else. Problem from growing.
Okay, so Jackie says, to make sure you're not spreading your mites to your other hives or maybe even to your neighbors, right? That's excellent, Jackie.
High mites also usually equal high virus loads.
Okay, so high mites equal high virus loads. So that's a known fact. It's not the case in every single hive, but probably in 90+% of the hives it is. And your chance of having the 1 or 2% that's not affected by viruses is slim. Very good, thank you. What other reasons might there be for knowing your numbers? Will?
Low mites, good queen.
Okay, so from a selection standpoint, how do we know if we're propagating the right genetics, right? If we don't know what our mite numbers are, I mean, I guess we could know by survival. That would be one way to know, I guess. But yeah, very important. If we're not being selective with what we're propagating, then chances are very high that we're propagating the wrong sort of thing. So propagating just colonies that swarm may not be the best way to propagate genetics. What else? What else could be a good reason to know your numbers? Yes, sir.
If you have a high mite load, you may not have viruses, but you'll have, going into winter, the winter bees may be kind of debilitated by the mites feeding on.
Okay, so not only do the mites cause issues with by propagating viruses, but they also weaken the bees by feeding on the bees' fat bodies, right? All right, so let's move on here. So what about creating increase? Would that be a good time to know what your mite counts are? So often we don't think about that, right? We're making up nukes, but we have no idea what the mother hive has mite-wise. So, or maybe we're boosting a colony, right? Important to boost a colony with something that's not a mite bomb. If I'm taking a frame of brood out of this hive, and this hive is a hive that had 41 mites in the mite wash, that could be a problem, right? Boost a nuke with a frame of brood out of a colony that has 41 mites. Make nukes from hives that have high mites. So important to know what your mite numbers are for those reasons as well. All right, and then it's already been mentioned, selection. So how do we know what genetics to propagate? Could be that we have no genetics we want to propagate, right? Then we need to bring some genetics in. But it could be that we have something really good right within our apiaries. That's often the case. As beekeepers, we're always thinking that the grass is greener on the other side. I've caught myself doing this. And often the best bees are the ones that we have in our apiaries. We just haven't identified which ones are the best because we haven't been intentional. So this is something that Carla and Paula came up with for us. So on the left-hand side, it has the queens that we're selecting from. The bottom, it has the year, so we know what the year is. And then on the right-hand side, we have the mite count. So we've taken notes in a lot of different ways, and this is how we're selecting right now. So come spring, we also add thumbtacks for honey production. But come spring, it will be very easy to determine which queens to propagate their genetics. Does that make sense? So this is something simple. It doesn't have to be difficult or complicated. It can be as complicated or as simple as you want to make it. But I would encourage you guys to start tracking those queens. Which ones are the queens that seem to do better with the mites? Which ones are the gentle ones? Which ones are the honey producers? Because that's really what we want to propagate. So anyway, that's something that we're using. We just started using it. I don't know, I think probably around June 1st. We've been talking about doing something like this for a while, and I appreciate the girls coming up with this. So that's going to be an easy tool for us, very simple. I'm not very good at record keeping, so this is on the hive itself, and easy to keep up with. So we mentioned neighbors. Another reason to know what our mite counts are is our neighbors. All right, so spring and summer buildup. We're on the tail end of the summer buildup, right? I was talking to Jackie earlier, and he mentioned that his hive experienced a tremendous boost of bees yesterday. He's got a lot of brood emerging. We got a little bit of a nectar flow going in some places. I think maybe down here in Hendersonville, it may be slowing down a little bit. But up in the mountains and at higher elevations, the nectar flow is still going. So during spring and summer buildup, the bees are building up, but what else is building up?
Mites.
Yeah. So I think everybody understands that the mites reproduce under the capping. So if you're making more bees, you have the tendency to be making more mites. So often beekeepers will come into the store in October, November, December, maybe it's January, and they'll say, man, it was my strongest colony. They made the most honey. And they were dead in November, they were dead in December. And that's because they were able to produce a lot of honey because they had a huge population. Now, huge population doesn't always mean huge honey production, but it often goes hand in hand. And so while they were producing a huge population, they were also producing a huge amount of mites. And notice how these hives look. They look great, right? So if you're not careful, you become overconfident. I know that from personal experience, right? These colonies look great. Plenty of bees. They're making honey. You got to be careful. It's time to be careful. Don't get overconfident just because you have a lot of bees in the box. So not only do they have a lot of bees, but the brood looks good, right? So you got pearly white larvae, plenty of nutrition coming in. Everything seems okay. But you got to remember that unless your genetics are slowing it down, that you're making a tremendous amount of mites as well. So this is something Lewis Cobble gave me, it to me last year. He wanted to show this to me. So this is how he tracks his mites. So on the left-hand side, he's got where the hive is located. So it's either away in an out yard or it's at home. And he's got a number for each one of his colonies. And so he did his first mite wash in May, early in the spring, right? So right there, number 68, how many mice does it have?
1.
I don't know.
So 45, right? Is that a problem in May? That's a huge problem, right? So in the spring, we want to start out super low. If we start out high, it's most likely going to be game over. Unless there's some intervention. So you can see, number 68, mid-July, well, late May, he knocked it down with a mite treatment. And, mid-July it had one. Look at October. So this queen can produce some mites, right? I don't know how much honey she produced, but she can produce some mites. So what if he would have got overconfident mid-July? He's got them knocked down to one, right? Check some mid-July. Everything's okay. And doesn't check them again in October. You guys think that would have survived the winter? Very, very unlikely, right? So Lewis Cobble's showing me this, and yeah, very sobering. So he treated it October 1st, and anyway, there's not an entry here, so we don't know if that colony survived or not. That may be the reason that there's not an entry there. But there were some other high ones there, and you can see that he was able to knock them down. Notice that there's a high percentage of colonies that do not get high. You guys see that? Which is often the case. So it seems that in our yard, we found that roughly 25% are the ones that are really putting off mites. And that's genetic. So you can have one that's right next to another one. And one could have 2 mites and the other one could have 38 mites. 6 inches apart or a foot apart. So drifting does come into play, but genetics come into play as well. Does that make sense? So if you look at these hives, none of these hives appear to be treatment free. There's no zeros all the way across the board. You guys notice that? So again, the chances of you having a queen in your apiary that will take care of the mites herself is slim. It's not impossible. We have a few in our apiary. It's not impossible, but it's highly unlikely. Does that make sense? So unless you're checking, you don't know what queen that is, other than maybe survival. So it's important to know your mite wash. Yes, sir. Or your mite counts.
John, how can y'all check for mites in your yards?
So that's a good question. So we check them mid to late February. And the reason for that is we're going to start splitting in March. So we assume that we've got our mites down, but we want to check mid to late February because we still have some time to do something about it before we start splitting. So that's the first time. And then we don't check again until between wildflower and sourwood. So roughly starting around June 1st. Carla, Ben, and I think Savannah helped as well, but they've all been checked except for 24 colonies. So as soon as those get done, which they'll be done this week, they're going to start over because sourwood is just about done. So those who need to be treated, we treated, and then we've never checked them in October, but based on this information right here, I think we're going to check them again in October. One of the issues you have in September and October is you have, well, mostly October, but you have hives that start to crash due to their mite load. So if they haven't been taken care of, could be your neighbor, could be feral colonies, they start to crash and your bees go out and collect their stores, and they also collect their mites and bring them home with them. We're going to be checking in October this year, but those would be the times that we check. Yes, sir.
You check every hive.
We didn't last year. This year we're checking every hive, and part of the reason for that is what we found is that we can pay for the labor by saving on the treatments. All the hives don't need to be treated every single time, and so it's a little bit better than a wash on the savings from the treatments. And then the other thing it allows us to do is it allows us to select. Does that make sense? The genetics. So we're saving just a little bit on the treatments by checking every single one of them. And then it's also giving us the data that we need to make an assessment on who's going to be making queens next year. So, yes, sir.
For your thresholds, what thresholds you call it, standard?
Our threshold is anything over 2. So less than 1%. Yes, sir.
So when are you testing in the summer? I'm kind of confused about that. You test with.
So we have the end of our nectar flow in our area is right around the end of May, the first part of June. So we start checking right around the 1st of June. So we'll check then, and then as soon as firewood comes off, they get checked again.
Okay, positive in June, you treat them.
Yes, yes, and the reason for that is you have a window there, right? So sourwood traditionally doesn't start for us until about the 4th of July. This year it was a little bit early. But we have that window. Same thing early in the year. We don't start making nukes till March. So if we test mid-February, we've got a little bit of a window there. We can make something happen, get it taken care of before we start propagating mites throughout, the apiary. Does that make sense at all? So when you have something coming up, like making nukes, or if you have a break in your nectar flow, that's a great time to check, because you can get in there and do what you need to without doing a lot of extra work. Extra work meaning you got a bunch of supers to move out of the way to get to it. So anyway, I'm grateful for Lewis. Lewis Cobble's our bee inspector. I consider him a friend. He's been so helpful to our family. And anyway, I'm very thankful that he shared this very, very sobering information. Lewis Cobble has an excellent overwintering rate. So by overwintering rate, an excellent overwintering rate, I don't mean that he gets all his bees through the winter. That's not what I'm saying. Some of these bees, it may sound harsh, but some of these bees need to die. Does that make sense? So this queen that was 45 mites in May, 50 again in October, it's probably best that her genetics do not continue. Does that make sense? So it's okay if some of the bees die. I'm okay with that. There's other things besides mites, right? How do they prepare for winter? How do they gather their food? How do they store their food? Do they do a good job? How frugal are they? Does that make sense? Do they eat everything and do I have to feed them all winter? I don't want to do that. Not unless I'm trying to get them built up early. So anyway, Lewis doesn't have 100% success rate. That's not important. What he does is he has a very high success rate, and his losses are probably 5% or less, which is pretty impressive. Those are better than my losses, or our losses. So moving on. So what do you see when things start to go sideways? And this is an example of it. I circled it. This isn't the best picture in the world, so I apologize for that. I circled these 2 bees on here because these bees have no wings. Or they have very little of what should be wings. They're all shriveled up. Deformed wing virus. I don't know if you guys can see the mouse right here. Something's going on with this larva. Some of this brood still looks okay. Looks like they're doing some uncapping over here. So, actually, here's another bee that has no wings. So this is a hive that if not dealt with is probably going to be in trouble. At a minimum, it would need to be requeened with something that can handle the mites. But I would recommend treating this. So anyway, that's what trouble looks like, right? So there's still some healthy brood there, but you're noticing a lot of uncapping. Now, if bees uncap on their own, that's great. But we know they're not doing a great job because we got these bees right here, right? So they are not maintaining low mite loads. It looks like this bee over here may have some issues with her wings as well. So viruses are starting to get out of control. So this is the beginning. These are the warning signs. So gentleman back here asked us what our threshold for treating was. We don't want to wait to treat until it looks like this right here, right? Often that's too late. You can get rid of all your mites, every single one of them. But if you're overrun by viruses, chances are you're not gonna recover from that. Or it's gonna be slow and painful. Yes, sir.
Would you say that at that point, you're like about 3 weeks behind treating?
At least. Could be more than that.
That's what I said at least.
You know, in the spring and summer, the bees can stay ahead of the mites. What I mean by that is they're producing so many bees that they can sort of stay ahead of the mites. It's when our nectar flow ends in, the end of July, and the bee population starts decreasing. Now you have too many mites per bee. Does that make sense? Or per bees, which will get you in trouble. It's probably been, 3 weeks would be one brood cycle, so it's probably been long, it probably needed to happen before then. But these are just warning signs. You go into your hive, you see some of these things. It's just a warning signal. All right, so this was a video. It's not coming up as a video, but you guys can see a few mites there on the bees. There's actually another one right here. When you play the video, there's another one over here. There's one that comes out on this bee. These are also warning signs. So this was a hive that we were, I don't know, it's been about a month. I don't know if we were taking supers off, adding supers to it, I don't remember. But I do know it pulled the drone brood apart, and there was some mites scurrying around. That got my attention, right? Now, fortunately, Ben, Carla, and Savannah are already in the process of checking, so I'm not extremely alarmed by it. But they're there. This is, unless the hive is overrun, this is often the only time you see a mite, unless you're used to seeing mites. Does that make sense? So for the new beekeeper, this may be the only time you see mites unless you're doing a wash. And it's not unusual to see one mite on your drones, but if you start seeing multiple mites, in a patch of drones, it's just a warning, might need to do something. I would highly recommend it. So this is Jon Robertson. It says wanted dead or alive serial bee killer. So this has been me in the past. And now bees do have a short lifespan. So bees will die. But it's a lot more fun to have live bees in the spring. We have a picture coming up here. So here's a gentleman who said, let's say we put off dealing with this for 6 weeks. So we're at the point of the year, guys, where we don't want to put this off another 6 weeks. I've tried that. That doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is our bees will start making their winter bees in September. Important to have your bees cleaned up for a minimum of 2 brood cycles. What's a brood cycle? Somebody give me a number.
4 days.
21 days. So 2 brood cycles, how much is that? 42, right? How many weeks is that? 6 weeks, right? So August 1st, add 6 weeks to it. They're starting to make our winter bees, right? Goldenrod's starting to bloom. Starting to get a little nectar flow in. And so we need clean bees to, for them to do that well. What you don't want is you don't want your young bees, your nurse bees, to have heavy virus loads and those bees feeding your winter bees, your winter larvae. Does that make sense? You got a sick bee feeding larvae. Not a good combination. That's a combination for disaster. I'm well experienced with that, by the way. All right, so that's the end of what I have. Did that make sense? Any questions? Yes, sir.
John, what would you recommend we treat with this time of year, as hot as it is?
Sure, you got multiple options. So somebody asked me that today. So I'd already looked at the weather. So you've got a few cool days coming up. For us over in Fletcher, we've got 2. We got Friday and Saturday. So if I'm going to treat with something that's heat sensitive, that's when I'm gonna use it, right? There's other options, not just heat sensitive stuff. I mean, you've got Apivar, you've got oxalic acid. I don't recommend you doing one treatment of oxalic acid. I was listening to a scientist, and they asked him about oxalic acid. He told them that once every 7 days is adequate. This is just the other day. The presentation was about 2 weeks old. That will kill your bees. 3 oxalic acid treatments, 5 days apart or 7 days apart. That will not get your mites under control. That will kill a few mites, but it won't get your mites under control. So how long is the brood cap for? Pardon? 12 days, right? So the mites emerge and go back into the cappings within 12 to 48 hours. So how many mites do you think you're missing if you're treating once every 7 days or once every 5 days with oxalic acid? You're missing most of them. So if you're gonna do oxalic acid vapor now, you probably still have a lot of cap brood. I would recommend every other day, 6 times. It is labor intensive. So 6 times 2 is 12. That's where the science behind that comes. And that will get your mites back under control. Once every 7 days or once every 5 days will not get your mites under control. If you have a heavy mite load, it will finish off your bees.
John, question for you.
Yes, sir.
So your brood that, or your drone brood that you're pulling off, that was a spring check, obviously, you're pulling out to see drone.
That was not long ago.
Yeah, that was.
Probably within a month.
Yeah, drone.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay, so typically I use that as an indicator
Mhm.
at winter, because I use like solid acid in the winter. When we do, and I'm on.
And can I ask you, just for the benefit of the club here, why do you use oxalic acid in winter?
When oxalic's most effective and it's broodless.
Okay, did everybody get that?
So when you have no brood, your oxalic acid is most effective because all you're dealing with is phoretic mites. Mites that are just traveling around. And there is no place for them to go into. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't have any mites, but the result of most people's list is going to be marginal, less than threshold most of the time. But in winter, if the regimen that I've been using for years now has been oxalic acid until you have 0 mite loads, 0 mite drops in the ports. And come spring, when I check my splits and everything, I haven't seen a mite on my drone for years. So that tells me it's been effective.
Okay.
But because you've got drones capability to go about when they are available,
Mhm.
we're just in an endless cycle of trying to get rid of the mites.
So for the benefit of those who are online, so Antoine is explaining that the most effective time to use oxalic acid vapor, or I would say a dribble as well, is when the hive is broodless. So, and that's why he does it in the wintertime. Oxalic acid is very effective, as Antoine mentioned, on phoretic mites, those mites that are on the bees. And if they're broodless, there's no place for them to hide. They're exposed, and it does a very good job. Antoine, how many treatments does that usually require for you to come up with 0 in the hives?
And that is it takes.
Okay, but on average, what would you
On
say?
average, it's usually 4.
Okay,
I've gone as much as 6.
Okay.
And I don't treat just one, I do treat all hives.
okay, so migration.
Yeah, and the drift, and I also have this only one time I'll use the word herd immunity.
Mhm.
This is where it truly comes into play. With one beekeeper out there who wants to be natural, they'll infect 5.
Sure. So Antoine's saying that on average, it takes about 4 times to clean up the mites with oxalic acid after they become broodless. So it would be important to clean up, to get that done before they start making brood again, right? Once they start brooding up, and those mites will be concealed under the cappings.
And footnote is that if you do want an oxalic acid, if you anyone to catch swarms, that's the ideal time to do it. Or if we get tactical bees from some other source, you may want oxalic acid, because then you're in that same status. You have no brood, and you have all your bees available to be treated correctly.
So Antoine's explaining that if you catch a swarm, often once the queen has started laying eggs, but before they've capped that brood, is an excellent time to treat with oxalic acid. Again, you have to understand how the treatments work, right? So if you understand how the treatment works, then you can use that treatment to your advantage. So back to your question, what to use, what are you trying to achieve? Does that make sense? And, but you've got multiple options. Some treatments shut the queen down. Well, maybe I've got plans for that hive and I don't want the queen to shut down. I might need to do something different, right? Maybe all I care about is getting them cleaned up and I don't care if the queen shuts down. That's okay as well. It just depends on what you need. But going back to what Antoine was saying about oxalic acid, understand how the product works, right? So Apogard shuts the queen down. Formic acid shuts the queen down. Maybe I can't afford for her to be shut down right now. Maybe I can, right? So understand how the treatment works, and then you can make a good decision on what to use. Yes, sir.
Like some of the treatments, you know, just keep in there 45 days or something like that. But you're starting it into, you trying to get like June 1st and then you're ready July 4th and the.
Yeah, so that's an excellent point. So he says some of the treatments have a long treatment period. So Apivar is one of those, right? 42 days. So if I've got a nectar flow coming up in a week, that's not an option for me, right? So I have to think about that. If I've got a high mite load in August, you know, maybe I've got a hive with the 41 mites, 1st of August. Do I want to wait 42 days to clean up those mites? Does that make sense? If I don't, then I'm going to use a treatment that is going to be quicker. So yeah, excellent point. So super important, guys, to understand how the treatment works. What's it going to do? And then try to think, it's difficult, at least it's difficult for me. I'm getting better at this, but think of what I'm trying to achieve with the bees. Does that make sense? What do I need the bees to do? Where do I need the bees to be at? And if I do that, then I can back up, you know, to where I'm at and see what my options are as far as the treatment. Lots of good options as far as the treatment. And we can talk further about that, but lots of good options as far as the treatment. But important to know what your mite numbers are, right? If I've got low mite numbers and I want to use Apivar, maybe I can use that as a protection, right? So a lot of other hives are crashing. So maybe I can stick Apivar in there and I can ride that period of time when other hives are crashing and still be protected. Obviously, you got to check, guys. Don't just assume that it's going to work, right? But if that treatment goes for 42 days, then maybe that takes care of some of the hives that are crashing around me in the neighborhood and those mites that are coming back. So you need to have a little bit of a strategy. And so understand there's not that many mite treatments out there. There's some new ones coming on, but there's not that many mite treatments out there. So if you figure out, I mean, you can probably count them all in one hand. If you figure out how they work, then you know what to attack the mites with when needed. Yes, sir.
So it's gonna be cool enough, let's say, on Friday,
Yeah, thanks for bringing that back up.
street with Foreman.
Yes.
Is that just a little too early to get those nurse bees or the winter bees cleaned?
Here, the question.
Yeah, Will is asking, so I mentioned that's gonna be cool, we're gonna have 2 cool days, Friday and Saturday, at least for us in Fletcher. I mean, that doesn't mean you guys are gonna have 2 cool days, but for us in Fletcher, right now, the weatherman is saying we have 2 cool days. And I think there's a couple cool days next week. So if I'm choosing to treat with formic acid, so the first 24 hours of formic acid are the harshest. So if I'm gonna use formic acid, then I'm gonna pick cooler days. Does that make sense? So with some treatments, you have to watch the weather. Those treatments being Apogard and those treatments being formic acid. Does that answer the question, Will?
No, I mean, if I treat on July 15th, I would rather treat on August 15th.
Okay, so Will, the question Will is actually asking, and I apologize, Will, for not getting it the first time, is, am I getting my hive cleaned up too early? The answer is no. Right? If I've got 41 mites, I don't want to wait till August 1st to clean up my hive. I'll be happy to have it clean as soon as possible.
But if I clean it up now, am I rolling the dice that, 3 weeks from now or a month from now, I'll get a slug in because I've got a dead out down the road?
Sure. Well, you may get that anyway, right? You don't know, but if you've got a high mite load, you want to get it under control as soon as possible. And to Will's point, important to know if that treatment worked, right? Which would help identify maybe a month down the road what's going on in the neighborhood. Yes, sir.
John, so another point, also answer a little, the temperature sensitive treatments, which they all are. The idea is you can also dose that accordingly for the temperature, so you don't have to put a full strength on that hive, whether you're using Warren Pro or Thymol or whatever. But the temperature sensitive hives, and also another thing you must remember in our area, remember, they do have a temperature range of sensitivity, but if you're thinking also in a grander, I try to look at things in the bigger picture in some ways, that the bulk of your bees are out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and coming back about 4. So bees are going to beard regardless of the temperature. But we also don't have 90 degrees from sun up to sundown. We have a peak temperature period, this is surviving others, that you can go with full doses depending on, I've not used Formic Pro that much. The Formic Pro is a little bit more potent than half dose, and that is actually apropos. But Thymol doesn't have that deleterious effect so much with temperature. If you pack on queens and drones and all that stuff, that's another subject, but the idea is that I think you can get away with Thymol because you're not 90 degrees from sun up to sun.
Yeah, so Antoine has an excellent point that many of the treatments allow you to do a lesser dose. You don't have to do 100% of the dose. So if it's hot and you choose to do one of those treatments, you can do a lesser dose. The other thing Antoine mentioned, which is very important, that if you're using a heat sensitive treatment, say you have to get your mites knocked down, it's at a crazy high number. You got to use something that's going to knock them down quick. Then maybe put the treatment on in the evening, so that a lot of that initial blast is absorbed by the cooler evening hours. Does that make sense? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted you to know that Lewis Cobble has logged in and is kind of underscoring what you're saying. So Lewis, while you were talking about, he said, if you don't clean it up now, you're really rolling the dice if your count is 40 plus. So, thank you, Lewis.
Yeah, thank you, Lewis, for that. Yes, sir.
I've heard terms of trade names and drug names, and I'm gonna be weird. So I hear like Guard, I hear Thymol, Formic Acid, Formic Pro. Which ones are the same ones that I don't want to?
Yeah, so Aprovar, I don't know if you mentioned that one, that is a synthetic miticide. It's the plastic strips. So that's Aprovar. Guard is a Thymol based treatment. It comes in paste form. It is heat sensitive. And then Formic Acid, Formic Pro, the active ingredient in Formic Pro is formic acid. So not the same thing, but when we're talking about formic acid, it's in relation to Formic Pro. It is also heat sensitive. I'm trying to think of, did you have another one or?
No.
An oxalic acid normally is applied in either vapor, so by sublimation, dribble. And then there's also the oxalic acid mixed up with glycerin in the pads. Yes, sir.
So it's going to add also add the temperature sensitivity of Thymol, for example. Thymol becomes less effective when the temperature doesn't kill your bees. It just becomes less effective. So because it's a paste, the heat will cause it to liquefy and hence it will be ineffective. Whereas Hornet Pro, it's actually stronger, leave it on there to wipe your bees out.
Yeah, so, back to Antoine's point, formic acid works via evaporation, so if it's too hot, it evaporates too quickly. Now, if you know that it evaporates too quickly when it's hot, there's things that you can do to slow that down. Does that make sense? So again, it's important to understand how the treatment works. If it works by evaporation, it's too hot, there are things that you can do to slow it down. The same thing with Apigard, Antoine mentioned lower dosage. So you can put less on there. Yes, sir.
Which ones do you emulate your supers on?
Okay, so, Jim asked, can you leave your supers on? That's a great point, Jim. Thank you for bringing that up. So some treatments you can use with supers on, oxalic acid and formic acid being one of them. Others you can't. Now, most of you are gonna be taking your supers off here very soon. So that would be a great time to do your mite checks, as well as, treat if necessary. Any other questions? So somebody was asking me earlier, so we do alcohol washes. And I think, well, I'm gonna mention something, I'm not gonna mention that, but anyway, there are other things to use other than alcohol. So I'm gonna demonstrate an alcohol wash here in just a second. But I know that there's stuff that's just as effective as alcohol, guys. I just haven't used it, and I believe that you use Dawn dish detergent. Is that correct? Use alcohol?
I use alcohol.
Okay. I'm not familiar. I know Lewis, I believe, uses Dawn dish soap, and I think it works just as well as alcohol. I'm not familiar with it, and I believe he's gonna be speaking with us in August. So somebody please remember to ask him about that, because I'm curious as well what the formulation is and whatnot. All right, so who here has done an alcohol wash or is familiar with an alcohol wash? Get you. Okay,
Randy Oliver, a couple years ago, did a big several article series of testing various washes. And he's the one that came up with the Dawn dish detergent ultra is the best
there's a bio washing.
for killing the mites. And these two.
This one,
You dilute it?
it's a tablespoon per gallon, I think.
Can you repeat what's going on here?
Yeah, so Jim mentioned that Randy Oliver tested several different solutions, and that Dawn Ultra was a viable solution or viable product to use for washing bees. Yes,
So
ma'am.
Lewis is right, Lewis is with us, and he's writing, yes, 1 or 2 tablespoons Dawn Ultra per gallon of water. And you might, I don't know if the people can hear, you might really.
Yeah, so Lewis Cobble is chiming in, and they're saying that 1 or 2 tablespoons, I'm assuming per gallon,
Yeah, Dawn Ultra per gallon.
Dawn Ultra per gallon is effective. Just to note too, that Dawn Ultra is probably a lot cheaper than alcohol.
Well, this is what the next question is from Cody and Lacey Whitmire. What's the benefit of Dawn over alcohol?
So the question is online is what's the benefit of Dawn versus alcohol? I would think that it would be cheaper. Like back during COVID, it was hard to get alcohol. You guys remember that?
Developed because of COVID, you couldn't find alcohol.
So, if you don't have, I guess the point being, guys, is there's really not an excuse not to do a wash. If you don't have something, I know like windshield wiper fluid can work. I've used Listerine. So if you get the Listerine that has a certain amount of alcohol in it, right? You need to be above 26%. You can still do your alcohol washes or your washes. And there's also, you can also do sugar shakes, right? The important thing, guys, is to know what your counts are. Does that make sense? It's one of the least fun things to do is check for mites. especially the time of year it's getting to be, we're getting ready to go into dearth. And bees are not gonna be happy that you're in them doing a sample. So maybe Shane, maybe you talk about that. As far as what are we getting ready to experience? What's the best approach? You want to talk about that?
Well, I was just gonna say, Lewis has a video on it, and I don't do any of my alcohol washes in the field. I take my samples and put them in Ziploc baggies. I just take a Sharpie and write the hive number on the bag, throw it on the ground, go through, collect them all, take them home, throw them in the freezer. And then when I get time, a few days, a week later, pull them out and start doing all my washes. In the air conditioning, as Lewis says, in the air conditioning, the music playing, not bees around pissed off standing.
So Shane was telling us that he takes all his samples, puts them in Ziploc bags, numbers them per the identification number on the, or mark on the hives, takes them home and does his washes in air conditioned space, with music on. So what to remember, guys, is this can be miserable if you tear the hive apart, leave frames out and the bees start robbing. It will be very unpleasant. So be aware of that. The nectar flow in a lot of areas is almost over. So as you're doing it, I'm not trying to tell you how to do it. I'm just saying strongly recommend that, maybe having a nuke box that's sealed if you have to take multiple frames out of your hive. But just try to be quick in and out. Once the bees start robbing, it takes a lot of the fun out of it. It's not a whole lot of fun anyway. But once the bees start robbing, it gets to be a lot less fun. Yes, sir.
John, I have a question for you personally. So, I've always had I know it's the importance of mite checks, but I always have this problem with understanding where we're doing a random check, one frame out of either 10 or 20.
Sure.
Or 16 or 8. My concern is that if the beekeeper pulls the wrong frame, all open root, identical to the frame you should have picked before, and he gets a false count.
Sure.
On how I want to know how you deal with that, because at the apiary, we were involved in a study where we just didn't test one frame, we tested 20 frames.
Sure.
And our counts came in at 0s and 1. So if the new beekeeper goes out and checks his colony, pulls the wrong frame and gets the false sense of security there, have you encountered that? What do you do to prevent that?
Yeah, so the question is what to do to prevent pulling the wrong frame. So in answer to that, and we're gonna talk about where to pull these frames from. I'm glad you brought that up because that's important. But I don't worry a whole lot about that. If you've got a mite bomb, it's gonna be reflected on any frame. Now, if you have low mites, you may not get as high as a count, right? But for us personally, our threshold is 2. So we don't worry too much about it. Again, if the hive is a mite bomb referring to that, those genetics just allowed a huge amount of mites to propagate, or that hive is strong and it went and robbed out another colony and brought them back. That's gonna be reflected. It's gonna be reflected in you may not get as high or you may not get as low, but it's gonna be reflected. An alcohol wash is not a perfect sample of what's going on in the hive. So like Antoine said, if you want a perfect sample, you're gonna need to sample every single frame and then do an average, right? But an alcohol is a decent picture. I'm more concerned about when we have a lot of capped brood, right? That it might be a false number because there's so many mites under the cappings. Does that answer the question at all?
Any wash is better than no wash.
Yeah, so Jim mentions that any wash is better than no wash, and I would agree. Whether it's a frame or the type, and you don't get as accurate a number is less important than if you have no number. And you're like this. Does that make sense? This will get you in trouble. So, anything else before we go to a mite wash? Yes, sir.
Acid vaporization, you said you recommended every other day, 6 times. Acrylic acid vaporization.
Yeah, so the question is what is the recommendation, with my limited knowledge on oxalic acid? It's every other day, 6 times in a row. And the reason behind that is the brood is capped for 12 days.
My question is that based on your experience or what you've done, or did you learn this from somewhere?
No, I've actually, so the question is, did I learn this from experience or from somebody else? And the answer is experience. I don't think I've ever heard anybody else. Usually what you hear is every 3 times every 5 days or 3 times every 7 days.
Well, I've looked into this last year because, the people in Florida, Cameron, Jack, and Ellis, and I think about them, but, it's 3 treatments, 4 days apart is 12 days. 4 treatments, 3 days apart is 12 days. Jack could, well, it doesn't matter. I'm sort of searching for someone who actually tested it.
Yeah, so I would recommend that you do the test yourself.
Well,
And you determine, no, I don't mean that, but that you verify it for yourself. That's important. So, very, very important, guys, and for myself, this is hard, right? Because I want what I do to work on every single hive. So if I set up half of my apiary and do one treatment or a certain amount of treatment and half the apiary, another treatment, what if the other treatment doesn't work, right? So this is why it's hard for beekeepers to test, because we want it to work. Does that make sense? But very important to verify what you're hearing, what you're trying. And then when we talk about verification, verify that your treatment worked, right? I've been guilty of, man, the system I've got for my mites is working. And so I get a sense of complacency, and it's worked for the past 2 years. And then I find myself losing bees. Does that make sense? So what worked last year may not work this year, which goes back to what we're talking about as far as do your checks, make sure that it actually worked. Yes, ma'am.
Cody and Lacey Whitmire from Zoom would like to know, what dosage are you using for your oxalic acid method?
Okay, so the question is, what dosage are we using for oxalic acid method? So the legal dose, I believe, is one gram. So I would recommend at least 2 grams per box, at a minimum. So I'm hearing from back in room 3 or 4. Again, I would say at a minimum, 2 grams, and then verify that it worked, guys. If it's not working, you may need to up your dosage. All right, let's go ahead and do an alcohol wash. Yes, sir.
One question real quick. You're talking about drawing a frame in order to get a samples from. What are you looking for on that frame?
Okay, so that's an excellent question. So the question is, when you're pulling that frame, what are you looking for? And the answer is nurse bees. You want nurse bees. Nurse bees that are tending brood. So you don't have many options, so that narrows it down for us. Does that make sense? And again, it's important to know it's so easy just to do what you're told, but it's important for us to understand why it works, or why it's not working. They say the best time to ask a question is when something is working. So when we're looking for these frames, we want nurse bees that are feeding brood. And so, in my humble opinion, the best 2 places to find that are either on a pollen frame, so the nurse bees are coming to that frame to get pollen, or on a frame with a lot of older open brood. Now, Carla has verified this. Randy Oliver's talked about this, that a pollen frame is nearly as good or as good as a frame with open brood. The reason that a pollen frame might be better for us, guys, is we have less chances of getting the queen. Does that make sense? When we start digging into the brood nest, the more we dig through the brood nest, the easier it is to get the queen. So where are pollen frames found in the hive? Usually right on the outside of the brood nest, right? So if you look, it's interesting, if you start looking at these pollen frames, often you'll see a lot of younger bees on those pollen frames. So with that, let's transition over into the alcohol wash. And I think we do an alcohol wash, this would be good, I think, for any wash. So don't get bogged down with just the alcohol part. If you choose to use something else, I think that this would be the way to do it for any of them. All right. So what we have here is a 5-gallon bucket. We use this device right here. Again, there's other devices that work just as well. This just happens to be one that's convenient for us to use. So it's called an easy check. And this is what we use to test mites or to run these. It has a colander inside. In the container. So a colander holds the bees, allows the mites to fall through. If you understand that principle, there's a plethora of things you can use, right? The important thing is you don't want the bees getting mixed up with the mites. So as long as you have something that holds the bees, you're able to wash the mites through it, then that's adequate. So don't get bogged down either that you have to have something like this. Just understand how it works. So what we'll do is we'll take the alcohol or the other solution that you want to use, and we fill it up about right here. So going to the hive, we'll find a frame. We talked about that, about which frames to use. We'll hold it like this. We used to use a tub. We use a 5-gallon bucket now, and I prefer the 5-gallon bucket. Stick it in there, just do a shake. What you're gonna have is you're gonna have a lot of bees flying. Those bees are not trying to attack you, they're just flying, because they've been dumped into that bucket. So let the bees fly for 15-20 seconds. What you're gonna be left with inside the bucket is a bunch of crawling bees. Those are gonna be your nurse bees. So we take that, take the bucket, bump it. The bees will all fall down into that corner. We take a 1/2 cup measuring cup. You've got to have something that's a reference that's consistent, right? So it could be a 1/3 cup. We use a 1/2 cup. That seems to be the standard. But the important thing is that you do the same amount every time. So some people will take this or a cup, and their sample could be inconsistent. That's why we use a 1/2 cup. Does that make sense? 1/2 cup is also roughly 300 bees, which allows you, if you're looking for percentages, you divide the mites by 3, and that tells you what percentage you've got of mite infestation. So you take that, we bump that, take that 1/2 cup scoop, we plop them into the alcohol, we put the lid on it. And then we swirl it like that for 60 seconds. We don't shake it. You'll see a lot of people shaking it. And what you'll see is that the mites come in and the mites go in. Does that make sense? We just want the mites to drop through there. So we just swirl it like this, 60 seconds. Shake the alcohol off the bees, throw the bees, and your mites are in the bottom. So that's as complicated as it is, pretty straightforward. Yes, sir.
You clean or reuse your alcohol?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. So the question is, do we clean or reuse our alcohol? And the answer is yes. So I've always thought that a funnel would be great for pouring it back in here. We just have 2 mite washes, so we just pour it into another, take this, pour it into another one of these containers. You've got the dregs with the mites left in the bottom. You just toss those, double check it. Sometimes you have to run your finger across it to get a mite out, and reuse the alcohol. Probably don't need to do that with non-dish detergent. It's inexpensive, but we do reuse the alcohol. Thank you. Are there any questions on that? It's actually not hard, guys. It's a little intimidating. The first time you did it, I know for me, it was very intimidating the first time I did it. But yeah, just practice that. You're gonna get proficient at it, and it won't be a big deal. Same. Remember the robbing issue, right? Once our nectar flows over, there's gonna be a lot of robbing. So find your frame. Obviously make sure your queen's not on there. That's important. If your queen's on there and she goes into the wash, that's trouble. Less chance of her being on a pollen frame, so that's why being on a pollen frame is, using a pollen frame is a good thing. Yes, sir.
How many seconds?
60 seconds. Yeah, you're just basically just washing it. You wanna make sure that alcohol too is covering the bees, right? So that'll tell you if you have enough alcohol. You want that alcohol covering the bees, not have to be, you know, the top layer of bees outside the alcohol. Make sure you get enough alcohol in there for that. Yes, ma'am.
Not the bucket on the side, the queen, if she is in that frame that you shook, she should come to the top of the pile. She can't get as hot as ours.
Yeah, so Carla mentioned something. If you haven't found your queen, another way to double check, and this is not 100%, right? There's not very many things that are 100%. But when you bump them into the bottom, those bees, there's a bunch of bees together, right? And often if that queen's in there, she will come to the top. I learned this actually, Shane brought me, he'd done, a removal, and he brought me some bees. He hadn't found the queen. And so I learned this completely by accident. So I was getting ready to empty the box, bumped the box, and all the bees went in there. Guess who came to the top right away? The queen. So it seems like she doesn't like to get hot. So Carla found the queen that way the other day. Again, that's not 100%, guys. So check your frame. Try to determine if she's on there first. But it's one more way to double check. And that's why a white bucket is also good, right? Because it's much easier to see her on a white surface than if you're using a dark blue or a black or a dark brown bucket. Any more questions? Yes, ma'am. That's an excellent question. So the question is, do we alternate our treatments? And the answer is we should all be alternating our treatments, right? And the reason for that is we're not trying to breed super mites. Right? If we use the same thing all the time, not only can the mites become resistant, but you're also breeding for super mites. So super mites that are not affected by the treatment that you're using. So it's always good to break up those treatments. Yes, ma'am.
I heard that after the alcohol wash, I think you kill the bees, but the mites don't necessarily die.
Yeah, I'm not, so the question is, so after the alcohol wash, are the mites dead? Don't know 100% for sure, but anyway, they're getting thrown out. They're probably gonna have a hard time getting back to the colony. I'm not positive one way or the other. I don't see them moving around. That doesn't mean they're dead. Thank you for bringing that up. All right, there's no more questions. Thank you again, guys, for letting me come. Speak. Carla's raising her hand back there. She's gonna come up here.
So don't forget, Antoine got raffle tickets. If you want one, you put your name on there, and if you win, you'll be contacted and you'll be given the opportunity to purchase a new kit, $100. And what I'd like to also, for our extension office, tomorrow they're gonna be using the room in a, with the tables in a square formation with 12 to 15 chairs around the tables. And the rest of the chairs are gonna go outside and in the closet. Paula? Oh, Carla's got, oh, did everybody register for the, how about, people on Zoom, would they be able to participate as well? Okay.
Wait, there's more.
Did anybody else not register?
Lewis Cobble says, good talk, John. Anybody on Zoom, if you would like to be part of the raffle, put your name down right now.
Michelle, how are these gonna be collected? When's the next meeting?
No, just put your name down now and I'll keep them. Yeah. Because I also want to ask people on Facebook if they want that. Okay. Cody and Lacey.
Who?
Jade.
Jade.
You got it.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Got two Zoom people that wanna. Okay, Cody and Lacey, I got you in the raffle. Oh, awesome. Oh, yeah. Come on. So my treatment. Yes.
Cody, so that's,
Okay, Cody.
yeah, so he can go to the store and get his on that.
Okay, Cody Whitmire, you can come in, but what was it that they got?
A Varroa check.
Okay, a Varroa Easy Check is, there it is. You can come to Hooper's Creek, Bee Company and get that.
Well, so it's Mark Hall.
Cody's stoked. We got lots of hearts and thumbs up, and so it's nice to have our Zoom participants be able to participate in that as well. Okay.
And how we announced that,
What?
put your name in for the. And then buy it for 100, you went over that in the beginning.
Yeah, Anton went over that again. Chrissy just wants me to kind of underscore what's happening here. So we have a nuke that we're selling for $100. In order for you to participate in that, then you would let us know that you'd be interested in being part of that raffle. So it's great that I have these coupons, but I need their names. So if you got one of these coupons just now, we need to give you the one that says, keep this coupon, and then I take the one with your name on it. That's all right. That's okay, Antoine. I got you. I got you. And if you want to participate online, please email me at president@hcbeekeepers.org. And I'll also announce it on Facebook so that we can get the people who are not in attendance today. Anything else, any other business we need to handle for anybody? Let's socialize. Let's put the chairs up. And then those of you that, just go ahead and put.
I need your name, yeah. I don't need
Okay, so I got.
Hey, you need a square of tables in the middle and about 15 chairs left.
Which one is yours here?